The northern Arizona sky hung low, a slab of dull steel pressing down on the pine-crusted ridges. 1887. Snow fell steady, not a fleeting flurry, but a thick, silent curtain that swallowed the tree line and choked the basin below. The wind didn't howl. It cut, sharp and quiet, threading through the woods to a lone cabin crouched in the wilderness. The air smelled of ice and pine, heavy with the weight of isolation. Then she appeared, a lone Apache woman, about 25, staggering through the drifts toward the cabin's faint glow. Her buckskin dress, ceremonial and torn, clung to her shivering frame, the hem frayed, revealing the smooth curve of her calves, her long black braids swaying like a rope against her back. Her lips, cracked from cold, parted with shallow breaths, her dark eyes burning with a mix of fear and defiance, pulling at something raw in the stillness. Barefoot, her toes sank into the snow, red and raw, yet she moved forward, unyielding. Wyatt Cole, 35, stood by his woodpile, axe in hand, his broad frame braced against the cold, coat stiff with frost. His eyes caught her, and a pulse of desire flickered. Her form, the way the dress hugged her hips, the faint tremble of her lips. He crushed it down, jaw tight. She wasn't a prize, not some lost thing to claim. He'd seen enough of war's cruelty to know better. He was no savior, but he wasn't a beast either. Before we dive into this tale, hit that like button and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? The story's just starting. A faint crunch broke the silence, her knees hitting the snow, her voice barely a whisper. Please, let me in. Wyatt's boots crunched as he stepped toward her, axe still gripped, eyes scanning the woods for shadows. The basin was empty, no tracks but hers, no signs of a trap. She knelt, hands splayed in the drift, her dress damp and clinging, outlining the curve of her waist, her braid heavy with snow. He crouched, slow, testing her. She didn't flinch, just looked up, eyes raw, lips trembling. I can reward you, she rasped, teeth chattering, offering nothing but words. She had no pack, no boots, just frostbitten fingers and a face carved with exhaustion. Wyatt's instinct screamed to walk away, to bolt the door and let the storm take her. He'd built this life alone. 8 years since his wife and son died. No visitors, no debts. But her eyes held him, not pleading, just waiting. Can you walk? He asked, voice low, steady. She shook her head, faint. He glanced at the ridge, the white void beyond, then hooked an arm under her knees, another behind her back. She was light, too light, her body stiff but unresisting against his chest. He carried her to the cabin, kicked the door open, and set her by the hearth. The fire's warmth hit them, a pot of beans simmering on the stove. He grabbed a wool blanket from his cot, draped it over her, and knelt to check her feet. They were red, not black, survivable. Keep them off. The floor, he said, handing her a tin mug of hot water, salted, sweetened with last spring's honey. Her hands shook, but she drank, slow, her throat moving with each sip, her eyes never leaving him. He sat back, watching, not asking her name, not giving his. The snow kept falling, sealing them in, and Wyatt knew. Whatever this was, it wasn't temporary. The snow fell thicker now, sealing the cabin in a white shroud, the northern Arizona night, sharp and unyielding. Inside, the hearth glowed steady, casting flickering shadows across the sparse room. Cot, table, rifle on the wall. Wyatt Cole, 35, sat by the stove, stirring beans, his broad frame hunched, eyes on the fire. The woman, Lila, about 25, leaned against the hearth, her buckskin dress damp, clinging to the curve of her shoulders, the torn hem riding up to reveal a glimpse of thigh. Her braid, heavy with melted snow, rested against her chest. Her lips parted as she breathed slow, warming. Wyatt's gaze flicked to her, a spark of want buried fast. She was no guest to claim, just a stranger he hadn't let die. He handed her a bowl of beans and a chunk of cornbread, keeping his distance. Her hands, still red from frost, trembled as she took it, her fingers brushing the spoon with care, as if she'd learned not to waste. She ate slowly, eyes on the fire, not him. The silence stretched, heavy, but not hostile. Wyatt broke it. How far did you walk? Her voice came low, cracked. 2 days. No boots. They took them. His jaw tightened. Who? She paused, lips pressing thin. My people. Cast me out. He didn't push. Didn't need to. The weight of her words said enough. Abandoned for failing some expectation. Left to the snow's mercy. Wyatt stood, checked the shutters, the wind pressing hard against the logs. He saw her tense, her dress shifting, outlining her form as she pulled the blanket tighter. He turned away, busying himself with the fire. You're lucky your feet aren't gone, he said, not looking at her. She nodded, faint, her eyes tracing the room's stark lines. You're alone here, she said, not a question. He grunted. 8 years. She didn't ask more, and he didn't offer. He set a spare cot near the stove, tossed a second blanket on it. Sleep there. Stay warm. She moved slow, wincing as her feet touched the floor, her braids swaying, her dress catching the firelight. Wyatt looked away, settling into his chair. He didn't want her story, didn't want her pain, but he couldn't unsee her strength, staggering barefoot to his door. The snow kept falling, the cabin creaking, and something unspoken settled between them. Not trust, not yet, but a shared refusal to let the cold win. The Arizona dawn broke pale, snow still clinging to the pines, the air sharp with frost. Wyatt Cole, 35, stood outside his cabin, shovel in hand, clearing a path to the barn. His breath clouded, gloves stiff, broad shoulders set against the cold. The basin stretched silent, the ridge above a wall of white and green. Inside, the fire crackled, beans simmering, the cabin no longer just his. Lila, about 25, moved by the stove, her buckskin dress patched but clinging to her waist, the torn hem brushing her thighs as she stirred the pot. Her braid, now trimmed shorter, framed her face, her lips parted with steady breaths, eyes calm but watchful. Wyatt caught the sight, a flicker of want buried fast. She was no possession, just a woman carving space in his world. She'd started small tasks, fetching kindling, wiping the table, limping but stubborn. Her hands, less raw now, moved with care, practiced from a life of work. Wyatt watched her from the doorway, snow melting off his boots. You don't have to, he said, voice low. She turned, her dress catching the firelight, outlining her form. I'm not helpless, she replied, steady, not sharp. He nodded, setting down his shovel, and handed her a bowl of stew. They ate at the table, the silence easier now, practical. He broke it. Why'd they cast you out? Her spoon paused, eyes on the fire. No children. I was the chief's wife. It wasn't enough. Her voice held no self-pity, just truth. Wyatt leaned back, jaw tight. He'd seen war's cruelty, but this, abandoning a woman to die for failing a man's pride, cut deeper. You didn't give up, he said. She met his gaze, her neck soft in the dim light. I accepted it, but I didn't want to die. He nodded, slow, and cleared the bowls. Later, she asked for a knife. My hair, she said, touching the frayed braid. It carries too much. He handed her his utility blade. No questions. She sat by the hearth, cutting it clean, the severed strands falling like shadows. Her shoulders straightened, her dress shifting, revealing the curve of her collarbone. Wyatt turned to the window, checking the snow-packed shutters. He didn't need her story, didn't want her dead, but her presence, quiet and unyielding, was rooting itself in the cabin's walls. The wind pressed outside, softer now, and the fire burned steady, holding them both in its glow. The Arizona winter held fast, snow crusting the pines, the basin locked in a gray hush. Wyatt Cole, 35, worked outside, his broad frame bent over a stack of rough lumber near the cabin. His breath steamed, gloves worn thin, as he measured boards for a new room off the side. The wind bit, but the work kept him steady. Inside, Lila, about 25, stood by the stove, her patched buckskin dress clinging to her hips, the fabric shifting as she peeled potatoes, her braid loose, framing her neck in soft curves. Her lips parted slightly, warmed by the fire's glow, her eyes steady, tracking her own hands. Wyatt caught her silhouette through the window, a pulse of want stirring, crushed quick. She wasn't here for him to claim, only to share this space. Lila's strength had returned, her limp fading, though her hands still bore frost scars. She moved with purpose now, washing linens, tending the fire, her dress brushing her thighs as she knelt to sweep ash. Wyatt had offered her his late wife's coat, wool-lined, patched, and she wore it layered, sleeves rolled, her collarbone catching the light. One morning, she stepped outside, joining him at the lumber pile. "Show me," she said, voice firm, gesturing to the hammer. Her dress clung as she crouched, hair slipping free, grazing her jaw. He handed her the tool, guiding her grip, their hands close, but not touching. They worked in silence, framing the room. Simple, sturdy. Hers, if she chose it. "Why build this?" she asked later. Inside, stirring stew, her shoulders soft under the firelight. Wyatt set down his mug. "You need a place, not just a cot." Her eyes met his, searching, her lips glistening faintly. "You don't owe me." He shrugged. "It's not about owing. It's about staying." She nodded, slow, and ladled stew into bowls. They ate. The silence comfortable, the cabin warmer than it had been in years. That night, she spoke again, voice low. "They blame me. No children. But it wasn't me." Wyatt leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Him?" She nodded. Old, proud, couldn't admit it. He didn't press, just listened, his jaw tight at the thought of her cast out to die. The new room took shape, its walls rising against the snow. Lila hammered nails, her movements sure, her dress catching on her frame as she stretched. Wyatt watched, not her body, but her resolve. She wasn't just surviving, she was building. The fire burned steady, the wind softer now, and the cabin, once a refuge for one, felt like it might hold more. The Arizona winter softened, snow thinning on the pines, the basin glowing faintly under a weak spring sun. Wyatt Cole, 35, stood by the new room's frame, hammering nails, his broad frame steady, coat open, revealing a sweat-damp shirt. The cabin hummed with life now, no longer a tomb for his grief. Lila, about 25, moved inside, her patched dress clinging to her hips, the fabric shifting as she swept the floor, her braid loose, brushing her neck's soft curve. Her lips parted with quiet breaths, her eyes calm but bright, catching the light through the window. Wyatt's gaze lingered, a flicker of want buried deep, replaced by respect. She was no prize, but a partner, choosing this life. Lila's strength had grown, her limp nearly gone. She wore his late wife's coat, sleeves rolled, the wool framing her shoulders as she carried kindling, her collarbone catching the dawn's glow. She'd started sewing, stitching scraps into a quilt, her hands steady despite old frost scars. One morning, she paused by the stove, hand resting on her belly, her dress tight, hinting at a faint swell. "It's been weeks," she said, voice low, meeting Wyatt's eyes. "I haven't bled." He froze, mug in hand, then sat across from her. "You're sure?" She nodded, her lips glistening faintly. "It's yours." Wyatt exhaled, not with fear, but focus. "You feel all right?" She gave a small smile, her neck soft in the firelight. "Better than I thought?" He reached for her hand, slow, his calloused fingers grazing hers. "We'll plan for it. Together." She gripped his hand, her touch firm, her dress shifting as she leaned closer. "This child won't belong to a title. Just us." He nodded, jaw tight. The cabin felt fuller, the air warmer. That afternoon, Wyatt reinforced the new room's walls, adding insulation, his hammer steady. Lila watched, her braid swaying, her dress catching on her thighs as she handed him nails, their movements in sync. Later, by the hearth, she spoke again. "I had a child before, years ago. Lost it early. No one knew." Her voice was steady, not ashamed. Wyatt listened, no judgment. "It wasn't you," he said. She met his eyes, her shoulder bare under the coat's edge. "I know that now." The fire crackled, the snow outside melting into rivulets. The cabin, once his alone, was theirs now, a home taking root. Lila's presence, her quiet strength, wove into his days. And Wyatt, for the first time in years, didn't feel the weight of his ghosts. Spring crept into the Arizona basin, snow melting into rivulets, green shoots piercing the damp earth. Wyatt Cole, 35, stood by the cabin, his broad frame silhouetted against a pale dawn, hammer in hand, finishing the new room's door. The pines whispered softly, the air no longer biting. Inside, Lila, about 25, moved with quiet purpose, her dress clinging to her rounded belly, the fabric shifting over her hips as she folded a quilt, her braid loose, grazing her neck's soft curve, her lips parted with a steady breath, her eyes bright, catching the morning light. Wyatt watched her through the window, a flicker of want buried beneath something deeper. Commitment. She was his equal, not a claim, her strength woven into their days. The cabin hummed with life. Lila's sewing basket sat under the table, her stitches marking scraps into clothes for the child. Wyatt's shirts hung beside her patched coat, the new room painted with her bark dyes, a pine carving from his mother on its shelf. One morning, Lila stood on the porch, her dress tight, revealing the swell of her pregnancy, her hand resting lightly on her stomach. "I sent word," she said, voice calm. "To my mother, through the trading post." Wyatt nodded, leaning on the rail. A week later, a red sash appeared in a stump by the trail. Her tribe's sign she was remembered, not a ghost. Her eyes softened, her shoulder bare under the coat's edge as she clutched the cloth. That evening, by the hearth, Wyatt pulled a silver ring from a pouch, his mother's, plain, wide-banded. "This is yours if you want it," he said, voice low. Lila's lips glistened faintly, her gaze steady. "I chose you already," she said, leaning close, her breath warm. He kissed her, slow, sure, her hand resting on his, chest, fingers tracing his shirt. "Our child," she whispered, guiding his hand to her belly, the kick strong beneath. "Ours," he echoed, holding her, not claiming, just present. The fire glowed, the wind a soft hum outside. The cabin was a home now, not a refuge. Lila moved slower, her dress catching on her thighs as she worked, but her hands stayed sure, sewing, cooking, living. Wyatt reinforced the new room, built a cradle, his scars softer in her presence. One night, under a starlit sky, Lila stood beside him, her braid swaying, her form warm against his. "This is enough," she said. He nodded. "It is. If this tale of grit and heart found you, hit that like button and share in the comments. Where are you under these stars? This home, forged in choice, stands strong.